Hello, class. This will be the fourth lecture in section 3.1, which is calculating central tendencies. This calculation is walking through an example of given a range of data and its frequency, how to do the calculation for me. This one's probably the trickiest of the bunch, and unfortunately, different books do it a little bit different way. And the book that we're using through McGraw-Hill and Alex does it a different way than what we described the last time I taught this last semester. So what we're going to do is to walk through an example of the calculation of the mean of the data set that we have here. And we had this same data set in chapter 2 when we walked through that. And I want to make sure that we understand how to do the calculation of the midpoint for the calculations of the mean. And the way that the book sets it up, it's the lower limit for the first class plus the lower limit for the next class divided by 2. And so when you look on this data, the lower limit is the first number. And so a lot of the other books, including the one that we used last semester, took the average between the two endpoints of each class. I think that's a better way of doing it, but nobody asked me when they wrote this book. So let's follow this calculation. Again, in the grand scheme of things, they both give you about the same number. So let me write these classes up here and show you how to do these by hand. Whoops, that's 49. So that would be 49, 50, and 59, 60 and 69, 70 and 79, 80 and 80, and then 90 and 99. So these first numbers are the ones we want to deal with throughout here. So what would be the midpoint? When you do that calculation, the first one would be 40 plus 50. And remember, we have to add those together first, then divide by 2, and you get 45. And 50 plus 60 divided by 2, you'll get 55. 60 plus 70, I think you see the pattern now. 80 is 150, divided by 2 is 75. And then 80 plus 90, divided by 2, which is 85. And so here's the weird one, right? 90. Well, what's our next category? Well, there isn't one, right? So you can see the pattern. So you have to realize that this next number is going to be 100. So you add 100, you divide by 2, you would get 95. And so these are labor-intensive hand calculations, but let me show you how to do it on the spreadsheet. And we'll finish the calculation on the spreadsheet as well. So when you set that up, you can see I have the data pre-entered and we have the frequency. And so the midpoint, again, when you do a formula, you hit the equal sign, and then, whoops, I'm going to do parentheses. So that would be 40 plus 50, end of parentheses divided by 2, which is 45, and equals parentheses 50 plus 60 divided by 2. Forgot my dividing. There we go, divided by 2 is 55, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to type in these numbers to save a little time because we know what they are. And the last one is 95. So again, the same strategy now, like we did in the first problem, except now what we want to do instead of using the single data set, remember ages 10 through 18, we use the midpoint of the range. So basically the next column is the midpoint times, oops, that's and, shift 8, not shift 7, times the frequency. And so basically that would just be the multiplication of that 3, which I highlight that cell, times 45, and that would be 135. Or you could add 45 3 times, and you could add 55 6 times, 65 6 times, et cetera, et cetera. So again, the beauty of the spreadsheet, we could cut and paste the formulas, and away you go. And so the last one here would be highlighting and summing that column, and that would be adding everything together. So this is adding all the midpoint calculations together. And so here we would be able to approximate the mean. And again, this is an approximation. This isn't an exact number. The exact number, you would need all the data points, right? So basically we take the sum of the midpoints, total midpoints, and then we divide by the total number of data points, which is the frequency, which is 40. And you can see we get the number 73. So right in there, you can see that that is where it occurs most often, which was 11 between 70 and 79. So that kind of feels right with regard to that as well. Again, the mode is probably a number between 70 and 79 because that has occurred most often as well. We don't know that exactly though, because again, without the raw data, you really can't calculate a mode or a medium without the raw data. This mean is an approximation. It isn't an exact mean, but you know, given enough data, it's a really good approximation with regards to that. So that ends the lectures for section 3.1, and next step we'll move on to section